On this episode of the AAF Exchange, Social Security's looming insolvency, AI's growing energy demands, and the economic outlook. Joining us to break this all down is Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Doug, thanks for joining us.
I am delighted to be here. Thank you.
It's been a couple of weeks. We took a break. You know, you were traveling the country a little bit, so
that's called escaping the office.
Yeah. I cannot wait to escape the office in a few weeks. So okay. I'm sure you also are ready to get out again, right?
Well,
famously,
I did a trip with grandkids.
Right.
Fun. Now I'm doing trips with in-laws and family.
Yep.
Not as much fun.
So, yeah, I feel that. I can hear you on that one. Yeah, I mean, it is the summertime, so just a quick note for everybody. You know, we don't keep it usually to the 2-week schedule as normal. So you know, we'll get our
we'll get the total right. We just won't do them every
We'll fudge it a little bit. So what's been on your mind?
You know, I try to stick to narrow economics and narrow economic policy issues, but my great frustration at the moment is this end game in Iran.
Yeah.
You know, there are foreign policy aspects of it, you know, ballistic missile programs and nuclear programs and some things I'm worried about on that front. But the sort of inability to say, here's a set of things that constitute a deal, and to with definitiveness say we've got it or not makes it impossible to price oil.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeds into everything in the economic outlook.
Right.
And it feeds into the inflation outlook. It feeds into the growth outlook, and it's just driving me nuts.
Right.
I mean, literally, I want to be able to make some decisions about what the outlook is for the second half of the year, and it isn't just me. Like everyone in the economy, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously the for the economic side of things, it's you know, filling up your gas, but it's also, okay, how do we transport food across country, you know? Like, how do we get goods from one place to the next, you know? It seeps into all of those different aspects.
Yes, and, you know, if it's just a spike, an oil price spike that literally lasts, say, a month, then you don't get much bleed into the other goods because the transportation costs aren't raised on a sustained basis, and, you know, it all sort of hits the top line price level, and then it goes away. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we got the PCE price index this morning, and, you know, the core's creeping up still. It went from 3.3 to 3.4 year over year. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Makes it harder to get things out.
Yeah. And the other portion of this with the whole Iran situation is, of course, the fiscal side of things. We just saw the supplemental request yesterday, and, you know, that's adding...
We're up to $82 billion as the cost. And it's not like it's over. See, everyone keeps thinking it's over. And the president has done a masterful job of somehow pretending it's over.
Right.
It's not over. There's no deal.
Yeah.
There are still ships in the area. There's still personnel in the area. There's still overflights for surveillance and drones for... I mean, it's going to continue to cost money.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on to, you know, what we came to talk about today. I'm sure we'll have a lot more discussions on Iran as we go forward.
Yes.
So, you know, we at AAF have focused a long time and a lot of energy on Social Security's looming insolvency. You know, we've talked about this at great length, and finally, it seems like it's getting some attention here in Washington. Why is it such an important? You know, we've talked about it a lot, but why is it such an important that we have this conversation on Social Security?
It's really the timing. It's here now, in any sensible metric, right? You know, the exhaustion date for the trust fund is now put at 2032 by the trustees. That's a blink of an eye in a program that is set to supposedly to balance over 75-year periods. I mean, that's no time, and you know how fast Congress gets things done. Right? So if we started today, what would it take to get Social Security reform through a Congress signed by a president? 2 years. Mm-hmm. So there's really no time. And the problem is much bigger than I think anyone realizes. You hear all the time just these sort of casual assertions that, let's just get rid of the payroll tax cap and it'll be fine. No, that's not even close to enough money.
Yeah.
And that should frighten everyone because that's a lot of money. That's $3 trillion over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
and that's not close to the hole we have. So the thing I'm focused on is in 2032, mechanically, the trust fund exhausts, and the rules of the road under current law are you may only pay benefits out of money in the trust fund.
Mm-hmm.
So in that year, what you're going to get in the trust fund is just the payroll taxes. There's nothing left over. And so you're going to have to come up with the remainder to pay current beneficiaries. The remainder is $600 billion in a year. And you have many, many, many years of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I said to you, Kyle, what do you got in your back pocket that's going to give us $6 trillion over the next 10 years? You'd be like, nothing, Doug.
Yeah.
And so my concern is they're unaware of how big the problem is. People will be tempted to tax their way out of it. That's an egregiously dangerous tax increase at any point in time. I don't see any willingness to genuinely cut a lot of spending of that scale that quickly. That's not going to be easy to do. And what does Congress typically do in those tough situations? Borrow the money. Mm-hmm. What is the one thing we can't keep doing?
Yeah, right.
Borrowing the money. So I see a complete unpreparedness for this problem. People don't understand the timing or the size, and I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, because, I mean, borrowing money, yeah, our interest is already one of the highest payment parts of our federal budget already, interest on the debt. And, of course, Jordan wrote a pretty good piece, a really good piece a couple of months ago at this point about the cost of doing nothing on this issue.
It's huge.
And it's not an acceptable answer to this.
The notion that you can't touch Social Security is the same as saying, I would like to cut benefits by 22% in 6 years.
Yeah.
No.
That's an extraordinarily big problem.
And
So yeah, if policymakers were to talk about we're designing a sustainable Social Security system, what would a good plan look like?
So a good plan over the long term. So suppose you didn't have the timing issue I'm worried about. Then it would be easy. Social Security is an easy program. It's money in, money out. So what you would probably do is, number one, begin by raising the minimum benefit and make the problem worse, because that's probably too low. And then you can do some things to raise more revenue. They could include raising the cap, not getting rid of it, but raising it so that it covers 90% of wages. That was how the system was at the beginning. It's now down in the low 80s, so do that. And you may even raise the rate a little bit and do that. And then you have to touch the benefit side. So you have to have the benefits grow more slowly. That means you're more aggressive at the high end about phasing out large benefits. There's the threshold question whether everyone should get a benefit. Like, Social Security is really an insurance policy against outliving your economic resources, and I'm pretty sure Elon's not going to outlive his economic resources. And we can name a list of the easy ones, but there is a hard question about where you would cut that off. Mm-hmm. But you have to do some things on indexing on the side, and you can raise the retirement ages, and all of those things bring it into alignment over 75 years. None of those things give you $600 billion in 2032. So that's the new problem, and that's the one that no one has put enough thought into.
Yeah.
I don't see any way you do it on all the tax side or all the spending side. So it's going to be both. And politically, that might even be a virtue, because there will be no way to have this sort of the standoff that says we're not raising taxes and we're not cutting spending. Mm-hmm. You're both doing things you don't like.
Yeah.
And that will be that.
Yeah, which, by the way, most blue ribbon commissions have
that's
kind
what
of
they
said.
do. Yeah, I mean, and if you ask real people, that's what they think should happen.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about this whole thing, the conversation, is it's finally happening.
Yes.
And because the American voters need to know, oh, by the way, this is coming. We're a few years away from this being a big problem. We're going to have to deal with this. The next president's going to have to deal with this.
And the other beauty of it is, okay, suppose we take $600 billion out of the deficit. Is the deficit gone? Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's $2 trillion a year. Yeah. So we have a lot more problems than just Social Security.
Right.
And it's time to wrap your head around the scale of the problem the United States has made for itself.
Yeah, it's not. The first step is admitting you have a problem. And
yes. We should be a self-help group for legislators.
Yeah, I don't know if
maybe not.
I don't know if you and I are the self-help gurus here, but on that note, let's turn to another another policy issue that we're facing, and that's the growing energy demands in the United States, notably driven by the AI data centers. We're starting to hear a lot about those. FERC issued several orders to accelerate grid interconnection.
God, I love the way you say that.
So that there's a lot of words in there that seem jargony. So Doug, walk us through what happened.
Is FERC?
Yeah.
This is this week's trivia question from me to you.
Yeah.
What is FERC?
We'll splice that in later.
But this is the thing, and this is what I wrote about, which is nobody thinks about electricity policy normally.
Yeah.
I certainly don't. But now it is literally everywhere, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, is a relatively obscure agency. It's been around for a long, long time, sleepy little backwater. And now it has become the centerpiece of the administration's efforts because its jurisdiction is interstate transmission. The states can regulate their electricity markets, but using that as the lever, they have done something very clever. Number one, they have not said, here's how you're going to run electricity markets, one size fits all. That'd be an invitation for 1,000 lawsuits out of the states. Instead, they issued 6 show cause orders. That's what they call them, which basically went to the 6 entities that control transmissions, regional transmission operators, and said, you show us that you're going to have a plan that allows people to connect quickly, because it usually takes 2 or 3 years to hook up something major like a data center, and those timelines don't work for AI. That has to happen fast. And so show us you have a plan that can get them online quickly. Show us that you can do that without becoming unstable. Like you have to have some reliability in the grid. And since both those things are going to cost money, show us you can do this without making the existing ratepayers foot the bill. So somehow shift it onto the data centers and the AI sector. And they didn't tell them how to do it. They just said, show us you got a plan that can do it. And they can be different across the different states. That's fine. I thought that was actually clever. And then instead of doing a normal FERC rulemaking, which takes 2 to 3 years and kills many, many brain cells, they just did these show cause orders. And you have 60 days to reply. So they're moving. They are expressing the urgency of the moment.
Yeah.
In this way, I think it's actually a really nice effort.
Yeah, because I mean, these they've really sort of accelerated in the last almost year or so. I mean, I'm sure it's been going on, but we've started hearing about it and we've started seeing it affect communities and
another way to say is everyone's talking about this. Yeah. Stop talking, do something.
Right.
Show us what you're going to do.
Right. Show me the money.
I think that was good.
Yeah. So if these FERC reforms succeed, what does the U.S. energy landscape look like 5 years from now? What happens if it fails?
Well, I think 5 years from now we have a much more nationwide grid. Like, of necessity, the interconnections will be more robust. We'll have plowed a lot of money into reliability, and we'll have every fuel source under the sun because they'll need it. And we'll also have a more forgiving policy toward, okay, you want to build this data center and you want to put a small modular reactor next to it and just use it for the data center, that's fine. And so we'll have these off-grid supply sources as well. So it's going to be a much more interesting electricity sector. And I have every reason to believe it should succeed. But if it fails, the real risk is, I think, reliability for the commercial and residential sectors. Reliability for the residential sector is a nuisance. You can't have your air conditioning and heat wave and stuff like that. Reliability in the commercial sector is crippling. Because one of the things that gave the sort of various parts of the country big advantage over the Northeast is cheap power. And if we get rid of the cheap power, we have a problem.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I'm sure Shooting will probably be talking about this a lot more and monitoring it. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and bring one or both of you back at some point to talk about it more. But now let's do a trivia question.
I did a trivia question.
Yeah. I failed miserably on it. So
okay, my turn to fail.
I'm going to make it really hard for you this week. The monthly Treasury statement for May showed the budget deficit totaled X trillion during the first 8 months of fiscal year 2026.
Cumulative, first 6 months? 1.1 trillion.
1.2, so close.
Oh man, they rounded it wrong.
Trillion here, trillion there. You know. It's actually a billion at that point, but yeah. I mean, again, we've been talking a lot about the debt and deficit on this podcast, and that just, again, should highlight how
6 months.
big
6
of a
months.
problem this is. In 6 months, we're at 1.2 trillion.
And that borrowing covers the interest.
Yeah.
That's all that is. We spent the first 6 months borrowing enough to pay the interest.
Jeez. That is just...
Yeah.
That the scale of this is just... It's very hard. So, I mean, is there a way for, like, a common... Because when you start talking about trillions, it's harder for the brain, for non-economists to wrap your head around that.
Here's the truth. I've been talking about this nonstop for the entire 21st century.
Yeah.
To anyone who will listen in any town in America at length. And I have been utterly unsuccessful in conveying the scale and urgency of the problem. So
Yeah.
I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
That's fair enough. I mean, one of my favorite stories of yours is when you were in some, I think, Southern American country where they didn't have a word for billions.
I was doing live radio into Colombia.
Yeah.
And they asked, so I was the CBO director at the time, so the deficit was going to be $432 billion, and I was being blamed for it. Anyway, so I said $432 billion, and the guy who was doing the live translation goes, billions? Thousands of millions? Because they didn't have a word for billions.
Yeah.
So it was 432 thousands of millions.
It's incredible. It just, again, highlights how hard it is
Yeah.
to get your head around how big of a problem this is. But it is a big problem, and we need to figure out a way to do that.
It's unreal.
So finally, let's talk about one of our favorite topics on this podcast, and that is, of course, the state of the economy. What's the latest?
The latest is the inflation data this morning, which showed, as expected, a top line at 4.1%, so it cracked above 4. That's year over year, PCE price index. The core is at 3.4% year over year, up from 3.3. So we knew that the top line would be bad. These are numbers for May, so at this point, about a month stale, and so that's peak Iran war. Seeing the core go up is the troubling part, and how soon and how large we see the disinflation in the core is the whole game. We know the top line will come down as global oil prices ease and gas prices go down. We see that, but it's the transmission to the rest of the goods and services. And one of the things that's been true is that we've had not just goods inflation; it's starting to show up in services too. So that's the part that bleeds over.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and it's hard not to talk about the economy without talking about the Fed these days. So, since the last time we talked, we've got a new Fed chair. He's actually taken office. What have we learned about the direction of the Fed?
So we've learned some operational things. New Chairman Warsh feels that the Fed has talked too much too often and is dialing back on some things. In particular, he did not submit some dots for the dot plot. So he's not a fan of these survey of economic projections, and my guess is that will go away as a feature of the communication strategy. If you looked at the statement was about as long as a tweet. They got rid of all the discussion of the forward guidance and the risks this way and that way, and just talks about this is what we did.
Yeah.
And that's what he says he will do. He also said, I see no point in holding a press conference to tell you we did exactly what you expect us to do, so I'm only going to come out and explain things when we change something. So that there's going to be fewer press conferences, not on a regular schedule. All the communication stuff is going to be different. He put together a task force for other things at the Fed, which is a way to build consensus within the building. But none of that sheds any light on what they're going to do with the fundamental problem, which is we've had inflation above the target for 5 years, and we have some pressure up at the moment, not down. And does that mean you raise rates or not?
Yeah.
And there are some people who've voiced that. He obviously was pretty adamant about not raising rates and indeed cutting rates during his candidacy. I don't think there's any case for cutting rates. I saw Bank of America. They said, we see 3 rate increases this year. I don't think that makes any sense. That's way too big, way too fast. But I see a big case for doing nothing at the moment, just holding and seeing how quickly we get the top line disinflation happening.
So the part about him basically taking a step back from the public, it's pretty interesting to me because it seems like that's a big change in the way it's been going. I mean,
so that the heavy emphasis on communicating with the public and markets originated with Ben Bernanke, sort of the post Greenspan era, where Ben was a big believer in the forward guidance, giving businesses a way to know where rates were going so they could plan capital expenditures, so they could undertake things. And you can argue it's a removing of uncertainty. We're aiming for this target on inflation, and we're aiming for this rate structure to get there. All that made great sense as a theoretical construct, but in practice, all it's done is confuse people by and large. And so I think there's a good case to be made for, we tried that, and it didn't work out as well as we'd hoped. Let's pare it back a little bit.
Interesting.
You don't stop. You don't go back to the bad old days when they didn't even release statements after the FOMC met.
Yeah.
We used to just sit and watch rates and try to guess what they'd decided. It's just craziness. So we're not going back to that.
Yeah.
But he's dialing back some.
Yeah, taking it out of the public view a little bit more. On the rate side of things, when's the next meeting that they have?
July.
What would give them a reason to do the, rate reasons either way, rate changes either way?
I think you'd have to see, for them to cut rates would require an apocalypse in the real economy. And I just don't see that, right? I mean, they just revised the first quarter GDP up from 1.7 to 2.1, and they did it even though the household sector spending growth at half a percentage point rate, goods and services. I mean, just really weak. The business sector is spending money like it's the AI investment boom. So, that's going to have to collapse to get them to cut rates. I don't see that happening. So I don't think that's going to be the issue. The issue is going to be, when do you look at the core inflation profile and decide you need to move to push that down? That's the whole game. And, the trouble with, we know the energy stuff is being driven by global oil prices. The rest becomes the issue, because you hear this every time we get an inflation report. Well, if you take out, not just food and energy, but if you throw out shelter away from home and dress suits and the used cars, that inflation was only, and people cherry pick these numbers, and you have to make some real decision about when you're concerned about the level of inflation outside of the energy.
Interesting. Well, Doug, thanks for coming on and breaking us down and having another fun podcast.
Thank you.